welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, the X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And I've got some news, but do we have any FileFest stuff first?
They still haven't announced who these two new guests are going to be, so I guess they haven't got the required 200 extra people signing up. So if you want to find out who FileFest has, go sign up and get your tickets today. It's in September, it's at the Mall of America. You can easily find all the details on Twitter or on their website. But they do have a bit of news at the moment. As we said last week, there is a store on the FileFest site where you can buy your merch even if you're not attending. Just for this month only, as it's Pride Month, they have a lot of X-Files themed Pride stuff on there at the moment.
Oh, cool.
10% of all proceeds go to the Human Rights Campaign as well, so it's worth buying your Pride merch now if you want to kind of have Pride X-Files limited edition t-shirts.
Very cool. Go buy those. My news is a bit weird and possibly a bit more tangential, but I couldn't not bring it up after reading it. So, I don't know if you've seen in the news this week, but there's been a whistleblower in the US who claims that the US government has, fragments of UFOs and actual intact UFOs in their possession. Normally, this is normal crank kind of thing, but this is actually a guy who's been working in the intelligence division for a while. This is he's sort of retired from it and then said this in an interview.
This is like when they had that astronaut on Frasier who said all the things off camera.
Exactly, but this one's actually happened in real life. And the Senate is going to have a hearing about it. So, is this podcast going to be sort of deemed offensive or something? If it's like, oh yeah, aliens do exist, and we've got the craft here. They don't look like they're not black triangles. They're this other shape entirely or something.
This is awesome.
It's one of these ones where I don't know why he's suddenly doing it, and there is a very telling comment where he sort of says he's never seen them and he doesn't know where they are, but he knows they're there.
Curious.
Yeah, so watch this space and what's going on with that. So keep an eye on it at least. But I thought it kind of links into what we're doing, and he's not been killed yet, so the X-Files is probably still in the realms of fiction.
So we're going for turning the show into Things Are Getting Strange. X-Files is actually real. This is not a conspiracy anymore podcast.
So we now critique this UFO versus the one the US government admitted they have. I did find it notable that he's saying they've got is craft and fragments of craft, nothing about what was inside.
Or where we have to stop doing this show because grey aliens are taking deep offence as to how they're being portrayed on the X-Files.
Yeah, we can sort of get on as the guest star. No, that's completely out of character for us. We wouldn't do that. We hate your government as much as you do.
It's offensive to call us grey aliens when we're actually Rigelians.
Exactly. And then the horror would they turn out to be like the space jockey from Alien or something.
Oh dear.
I was going to say xenomorph, but I don't think you're going to get an interview with a xenomorph.
I don't think we'd last long.
No. So, Mr. Anyway.
So, today's show,
moving along to our episodes, I suppose. So, it's a new conspiracy two-parter. And this week, it's a Piper, Maru, and Apocrypha. Piper Maru, directed by Rob Bowman, written by Chris Carter and Frank Spotnitz. First broadcast on the 9th of Feb 1996. There's a load of familiar faces in this one, and a whole lot of recurring guest people, but we've got people like Krychek is back, Skinner's back. I don't think Spokenman's actually in the first episode, is he?
No, I think he's only in part 2.
But of other people, we have Robert Clothier, who plays General Christopher Johansson, who is the old man that Scully goes to see, was previously in Red Museum. He's in fact the farmer who turned up and said, I've got something to show you, and kidnapped them.
Yeah.
Morris Panich plays the grey-haired man. He was previously Dr. Simon Oberach in F. Emasculata. But the weirdest guest star, and it's like a double take when I saw this one, is I don't actually know who this guy is. I only know him by reputation, and also because your mother likes his music. But it's when you read that Michael Bublé is in the guest list.
It is indeed that Michael Bublé
It
as
is
well.
that Michael Bublé. Assuming that you, the audience, know who this is, because I only vaguely know he's got a singing career, 9 albums or something. But yeah, in the submarine shots of this episode, if you look carefully, you can spot Michael Bublé amongst the rest of the crew.
It's specifically in the black and white flashbacks in the infirmary. You can spot him, a very young Michael Bublé. You also get Luis Cardinal back as well.
We do. I mean, I was sort of lumping him in with the other. Our regular recurring guest stars are back in again. The Piper Maru of the title is a French salvage vessel, and it is exploring the Pacific Ocean. A member of the crew, Galthia, is lowered down into the sea and encounters a sunken plane from World War II. Communication with the ship is then cut off when Galthia discovers that there is a man inside the cockpit of the fighter plane and is still alive. He blinks and a kind of black oil seems to fill his eyes. Sometime later, Galthia is hauled up to the surface. His suit is covered in black oil and his eyes exhibit the same strange phenomenon. Post-credits, Skinner tells Scully that the FBI's investigation into her sister's murder has been made inactive, despite the evidence they've recovered. But Mulder tells Scully that Piper Maru visited the same coordinates as the Talipus from the episode Nisai, which he believed retrieved a crashed UFO. The Piper Maru returned to dock in San Diego, and all her crew save one was found suffering from radiation burns. Boarding the ship, Mulder and Scully find traces of oil on Garcia's diving suit as seen at the start. They view a video of the dive, and Scully identifies the sunken plane that Garcia found as a P-51 Mustang. Meanwhile, Garcia returns home and begins searching for something. When his wife arrives, he attacks her, and she is later seen leaving the house with the same black oily eyes as the previous characters. In an investigation into the plane, Scully visits an old friend of her father's, Commander Christopher Johansson. Johansson initially rebuffs Scully, but then later admits that he has also been to the same coordinates on board a submarine called the Zeus Faber, which was also indicated on board the Piper Maru. He relates an incident how many of the crew members suffered from radiation burns, while he assisted with a mutiny against his commanding officer. The audience is shown that the commanding officer was also inflicted with the same black oil eyes as the other characters. Mulder visits Garcia's home and finds him passed out, covered in oil, with no memory of his experience. Amongst the things that Garcia previously rifled through is a letter of a salvage broker, which Mulder then goes to visit. The secretary, Geraldine, rebuffs Mulder, and he stakes out the officer and watches as she flees while the office is invaded by armed men. Mulder tracks Geraldine to Hong Kong, and he is followed by the possessed wife of Garcia. Mulder learns that Geraldine is a middleman selling government secrets. Mulder handcuffs himself to her and forces her to take him to his office to meet her contact. This is revealed to be Alex Krycek, who Mulder believes has been selling the contents of the digital tape he stole in Paperclip. Krycek escapes through the window while Joan is shot dead by a group of men who attack coming down the hallway. Mulder frantically unlocks his handcuffs and manages to escape. The men, however, are then killed by Garcia's wife appearing in the hallway and then creating a brilliant bright flash, which causes them to all suffer radiation burns. Back in Washington, Skinner is confronted by several men and told not to pursue Melissa Scully's case any further and leaves the restaurant. Later, when he returns to the same restaurant, Skinner encounters Louis Cardinal, also known as a Hispanic man, arguing with a waitress. He shoots Skinner upon the confrontation. Mulder catches up with Krycek at the airport, who informs him that the digital tape is in a locker back in Washington, and he will give it to Mulder in exchange for letting him go. Mulder sends Krycek to the bathroom to get cleaned up, and Garcia's wife follows him, infecting him with the same black oil eyes as everyone else. So, as usual, we're going to try and take the two episodes separately, and doing so, Piper Maru is great.
I think it's an excellent episode.
Absolutely. I mean, the black oil, as we should probably start referring to it as, is a fantastically creepy idea. It's just wonderfully... It's actually more genuinely alien than anything they've had to date, isn't it?
Because it's not human in any way.
No. And it just, the fact it sort of leaves this weird residue on you, there's kind of a bit of alien in there, and in fact, apparently the transmission vector is really simple, however it's doing this infection. It's able to jump from body to body really fast. I would say, however, though, the black oil has no chill. Or the black oil is weirdly inconsistent in its behaviour. I love it, but they hold Garcia up to the surface and he says, "Oh, I'm fine." Then, for some reason, irradiates the entire crew.
And when you see it doing the irradiation thing later later. It's not a slow, subtle process.
No, it's deliberate action in its by it.
Much like in Fallen Angel, it's the bright, flashy light.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point of connection, even though the Fallen Angel alien looks nothing like what we've got here, but they both seem to be able to do radiation burns at will.
What's to say that the alien wasn't also possessed by the black oil?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, maybe that explains how it got into Max's camper van.
Mm.
And maybe, so Max might have actually been carrying the black oil when he was abducted.
You never know. It can blend in perfectly, the black oil, like you see on the captain of the submarine.
Yeah, and it's really weird because the captain of the submarine just is kind of being kind of normal and behaving, but Garcia, once he leaves the ship, is doing the Terminator to his wife.
It made me think of the scene at the start of Annihilation where the husband returns home, but the wife can tell it's not really the husband.
Yeah, and as you said, it'd be interesting to know if Jeff Vandermeer has watched the X-Files, because it feels very close there. But it's like the black oil, when it's possessing Garcia, is mostly doing the Terminator. When it's got hold of his wife, it's kind of doing the Terminator. And then it's got hold of Krychek, and it's doing, I'm going to play things straight, I'm going to do normal, I'm going to talk back to Mulder, I'm not just going to stand there menacingly. But I know why the Piper Maru radiation thing is basically to invoke Dracula. That's fine. But again, it's if prolonged contact with the entity caused you to develop radiation burns, that would be fine. I suspect they said, oh, hang on, Mulder's spending time with Krychek, we can't have that. Otherwise, Mulder's going to die.
You have to give the believability that it might be an atom bomb that they're dredging up as well, by giving anybody who comes into contact with it winds up with these kind of Hiroshima-level burns.
Yeah. I mean, it's great, it's weird, it's alien. It's actually quite a really spooky scene when his wife walks into that hallway and just obliterates everyone. Not really clear why she did that, other than conveniently let's get an obstacle for Mulder out the way, but it's really cool. I have lots of praise for Piper Maru.
It's something we can get into the next episode more as well. I think the next episode makes clearer why the oil's behaving the way it does as well. In this one, it just seems to be a bit abstract in that it's possessing random people and it doesn't seem to have a clear goal.
Yeah, and it's not really a debate of whether it can access the person is possessing memories, because Garcia has to know that letter's come from the salvage person, because there's no way the black oil could know that. And it has to be able to know what Krychek's relationship with Mulder is to actually begin to pretend at doing that.
It knows enough to be able to assimilate as well, to be able to convince doctors that Gautia's okay and to make it back to his house okay.
Yeah.
So it can do basic things.
But then again, it's a case of, it's tried to murder the entire crew, and it could have just hang on for a bit and just let the ship go home and it would be fine. But again, I suppose it's unfortunately constrained by the episodic nature of the episode. You've got to get Mulder and Scully into this proceeding somehow. I'd forgotten, though, that we actually have this close connection to Nisai. The fact that that's the exact same coordinates that the Talipus had visited is interesting. You do sort of get into this slightly hazy bit of, in Nisai, they retrieved the craft, because we saw it in the warehouse, at least we were told to retrieve the craft, and the Piper Maru apparently didn't know that and went down anyway, and found a fighter plane. And, well, I'll save it till Apocrypha, but we've got this slightly weird situation of Garcia sees a man in a fighter plane alive. And we can only assume that this is the original pilot of the plane, and he's fine and he's infected with the black oil. He's been down there a long time in a half-flooded F-51 fighter.
We don't know the nature of the black oil, though, if it's got a way to kind of keep its hosts alive.
Oh, indeed.
So this legit could be a fighter pilot from the 1950s that's just been preserved by the oil.
Oh, no, we know it's World War II.
But the incident on the submarine took place in 1953.
This is very true. Where the plane is from, though.
But the oil did not escape into that area until after the incident on the submarine, so this is the 1950s that this plane came down.
Yeah, I know, this is why I get a bit confused. Yeah, we'll save this to the next episode, because there's some stuff to get into on this one. So, one interesting thing on rewatching the episode, though, is how tied in it is to the conspiracy. I mean, Piper Maru feels like it should be you're linking all the conspiracy, you're kind of threading the needle with this one. Because we've got the tape from Paperclip, we've got the salvage vessel from Nisai coming back in again, and what they dredged up, and we've got this new angle, which is the black oil, which we've never seen before, but we can link that back to Fallen Angel. So this feels like a kind of linchpin of the entire Enterprise, which would be really cool. And we get so putting that aside, we also get some character stuff. And I think you said Gillian Anderson won an award for this one.
Was nominated for an Emmy.
Nominated an Emmy for acting in this one. She's pretty good. Hard done by a person whose sister's murder is just deemed not worth investigating, which is pretty awful, really.
I like, in a way, the fact that Scully's first thought, because of course Scully doesn't immediately leap to conspiracies, is that it's a sexism thing. That they're not interested because she's kind of an insignificant woman that's been murdered, whereas they pour more resources into it if it was someone who was deemed important.
Yeah, a politician or a businessman or something, but it's just this new age hippie who died inexplicably.
It's not until later in the episode when it becomes kind of increasingly obvious that there is something bigger at play, when Skinner's also targeted.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. She made an interesting point of how good the FBI allegedly are with their ability to find suspects, and Melissa's killer is basically apparently impossible. It defies explanation, except of course it does all tie into the conspiracy angle. But Scully's not one for that at the moment.
I do kind of wish, and it's interesting rewatching it because you kind of see the Mulder-Scully relationship through rose-tinted glasses, knowing that they end up together, and everything else that we know from having watched the entire series of X-Files over the years, is that how little Mulder seems to care about Scully's personal journey at this stage.
Yeah, Scully comes into the office visibly upset. Oh, it's nothing Mulder. Okay, so the Piper Maru.
Mulder can't read Scully in any way, despite being this masterful psychologist. And it's kind of interesting to me that the things that you see recreated on the fandom through GIFs and other memes and stuff like that are the cute moments, the wiping the sauce from around her mouth in Red Museum and that sort of thing, vague shoulder touches and hand-holding. But the way they interact with each other is so distant.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd coming after Syzygy again, when we saw them at their level worst with each other.
But even here, I'd like to think that even if I was focused and excited about something, if your coworker comes in visibly upset, it would be more of a, you okay? Yep, all right, on to what I care about.
Well, as we said, I think it was for Dodcom, it's the experience of being Scully coming into Mulder's office in the morning and him sort of saying, wormholes or something. And you just go, oh, for God's sake, why am I in this department?
I noticed in this episode she knocks before she comes in even as well, so we must be so afraid of walking on Mulder watching pornography at this point.
Yeah, it's just, oof.
That she can't even just walk into her own office.
That's not good. It's a shame, though, that we're splitting them up again, that they can't go on this adventure together for no actual reason.
Scully doesn't.
She mostly goes to that military base to talk to the captain, because she gets the vital one-sided aspect of the scenes on the submarine. Does use favour. Yeah,
you are right. They are kind of oddly split up in this episode, and they're split up for kind of a weak reason, ultimately.
Absolutely.
As Scully recognises a plane, and apparently we don't have libraries in Washington, so she goes off on this individual journey to talk to a friend of her father's, which, bizarrely, he is connected to this entire thing, but the chance of it is so low.
Oh, it feels lazy writing, doesn't it?
It's just to give us really that nice scene in the base where Scully has a bit of a moment of remembering her childhood with Melissa.
Yeah.
Which is, I imagine, part of why Scully was nominated for the Emmy of this personal moment for her.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And she sells it very well and everything. But yeah, as you say, though, it's a really blunt way of making sure that Scully is safely left in America while Mulder goes to Hong Kong. And if we're brutally honest, he didn't need to go to Hong Kong at all.
He's just following that salvage broke.
There's no good reason for Cratchit to be in Hong Kong. He could just as easily be in Washington anyway. I don't think we gain anything by taking a trip to Hong Kong. Because it's not like we're implicating the Chinese or the Hong Kong government, because was it handed over? It wasn't even handed over at that point, was it? I think it was still British controlled. So, yeah, we only gain an exotic locale for this one scene.
In which they don't really leave the airport.
No, and it's also basically that Mulder can't have his gun, so he's just got to drag Geraldine around in handcuffs. And yeah, and then Krycek says, "Oh, the tape's encrypted," and it's like, "We would like to have a word with you, Krycek," because the episode kind of sets it up, and then we never actually hear again any dispute of, yeah, he's been selling the secrets off that tape. So Krycek, where's your Navajo translator? Because can we steal their notes? Because they're gonna have what they pulled off the tape.
Yeah.
And also, the tape seems to just be the tape is a MacGuffin, in all honesty, that they're just using as an excuse for things, given it has everything and nothing on it, as far as I can tell.
I feel after saying the episode's really good, you're really slamming on it again.
I know, I can't help it.
But
the black oil itself, I think, is fantastic.
I think the best thing about the episode is Scully and Skinner's relationship, to be honest. Is there are a lot of meaningful scenes here between Scully and Skinner, rooted in the fact of everybody's giving up on Melissa's supposedly cold case and Skinner refuses to let it lie, which ultimately winds up with him being shot by Louis Cardinal, the same person who killed Melissa.
Yeah. You're willing to put Skinner and Scully into a relationship.
I totally ship them.
You realise, of course, their ship name is unfortunately Scully. Or
Skulner?
Yeah, Skulner. Okay, maybe. But yes, it is Skinner actually sort of dedicating and digging in with what resources he has, despite being warned off of it. We do have to question how much time Skinner's spending in this one restaurant where he seems to be permanently, and gets himself shot. Also, when your assassin has killed the person that the person is looking into too much closer detail, should you really send the same assassin back to kill him? Surely a different assassin would be a better idea.
I think it's more for the visual thing in the audience where he's got his back to the camera when he's arguing with the waitress, and when it turns around you think, oh hell, Skinner's in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of clear from the three people who came to talk to him and sort of just vaguely threaten him.
The three people were only vaguely threatening. You knew the second you saw Louis Cardinal that there was going to be trouble.
Very true. Also, kind of stupid guy of spitting on Skinner in case of, should you be giving them more DNA evidence? I'm not sure what Cigarette Smoker Man tells his assassins. The episode is great fun, but there's, when you sort of stop and think about it, there's some problems with it. Like, Geraldine as a character feels really superfluous. Because she's basically there, her whole thing is to get Mulder back together with Krycek.
Her actress is doing her level best to be
really is.
Awesome kind of femme fatale in there.
Exactly, and she's wasted because she's shot. She has probably like under 5 minutes of screen time for this episode. And yeah, she's just killed by some guys. I mean, we don't even know who those people in the corridor were. I think they were speaking French.
I'm assuming it's more of the French government.
Yeah, but we don't really get anything on who they were, what they knew, how they've tracked this
There is
down.
an indication in the episode that the French government might not be in on the conspiracy, but at least thought they were dredging up an atom bomb.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool, the third atom bomb, the one that never got delivered and just wound up sunk in the Pacific instead, is a cool and plausible cover story because it explains why they're finding radiation readings down there. I mean, admittedly, Captain Johansson's thing of, oh yes, we went to get an atom bomb and then the radiation burn started. Do you not think that might be not connected? Because water's really good at sort of insulating against radiation.
Is it?
It's what they use.
I presume that's why they use it in nuclear reactors.
Exactly. So it's knowing anything about how radiation works is everyone on the Zeus favor should have been saying, what the hell is going on? This doesn't make any sense.
Would you have had so much knowledge of this in the 1950s?
Probably not. But I'd expect to these days on reminiscing about it going, wait a minute.
You are bear in mind if you watch those old PSAs, wartime PSAs for America, where they say things like, if you see the bright flash of light, put a newspaper over your head, which would be wonderful protection against an atom bomb.
As reminded me, as is common with these episodes, we like to look at the genesis of the episodes. And wow, Piper Maru has a doozy of a stupid one, I feel.
I don't think it's as bad as how Gordon saw a gargoyle.
It's not as bad as that. But it's still, Chris, could you not have had something more interesting as a basis? So
I don't think it's necessarily more interesting. It is interesting what he wanted. It was this one was there were two things that Chris Carter always had in mind that he wanted to showcase in the X-Files at some point, and it just seems a bit bizarre to me that he decided to put them both in the same episode. But one was a black and white flashback set on a submarine, and the other was a sequence of a drowned and sunken World War II bomber with someone trapped in the cockpit.
And that image, I mean, I love that as an image.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. It's a fantastically weird start to an episode. I just don't think they knew what they would... I think all they had was the image and they had no idea of what it meant.
You've got, from a horror perspective, that the deep ocean, particularly in the middle of the Pacific, is dark and terrifying. So you've got this diver going down in a full diving suit, particularly immobile, alone, with his radio cutting out as he goes down, only to find a sunken ship, a sunken plane where he doesn't know where it is, and seeing someone still alive inside it. It's absolutely freaking terrifying.
Absolutely. It just feels like it should be set up for a ghost story rather than an alien story, doesn't it?
Mm.
That feels sunken things in the deep and things are going weird down there.
Well, you could have it in an alien story. You're looking at the likes of The Abyss and Underwater and things have similar kind of feel and concept to them. But it's just this fleeting moment and then we never refer to it again.
Yes, and that's... I think they realised they wrote themselves in a corner because they really tried to fudge the details in Apocrypha, which we'll get to. But the P-51 Mustang drops in importance so rapidly in the episode and no one seems to care about it. And I think the other problem is that it's because that video feed doesn't show the guy in the cockpit. We seem to forget about it because no one except the audience and Galthia has ever seen it. And again, it feels like that should be far more important thing of, there's a guy trapped down there with black oil eyes. What in the hell was that?
It's just our shocking opening sting, which admittedly stays with you, but otherwise doesn't really serve much for this episode.
No, and the other thing with the black oil is a proximity thing from later on. Is when Galthia gets his wife, he kind of grabs hold of her, and then we later find him just covered in oil. When it gets Krychek, she grabs hold of him in the toilets and just sort of thrusts him against the wall, and we don't see what happens. Probably for the best, really. I don't think we want to know how this is working. But for the start, is Galthia is a distance away. The black oil person, whoever they are, is in a P-51 Mustang, and he's in a hermetically sealed diving suit. And the black oil swims across the ocean and into his diving suit?
Possible, I guess?
Possibly.
I'd be worried that there was a crack that oil could get through to get into something that's designed to be watertight.
Yeah, I think the water would have got in there first.
But again, we don't know how this thing is transmitting yet, and we don't know if it has any special powers or abilities, or it can phase through solid matter or anything like that.
It's true.
Given things we've seen in the X-Files so far, Softlight, there is a world of possibilities here.
There is.
I don't think you've really focused entirely on Johansson, or whatever he's called. Is he Johansson?
Is Scully's childhood friend, or the friend
the
of the
father
family.
of her father's friend, is that I hate how weak that plot point is, how she stumbles onto such an important character essentially by accident. We've seen in previous episodes, like, I keep going back to DPO as being a great example of detective work, is we can write these great detective stories, but this is a plot point that I could have accepted if we'd written it in better. If we connected things and it wasn't just Scully saying, oh, my brother once made a model of a plane like that. For some reason, this'll take me back to speaking to my dad's friend who is connected to absolutely every part of this plot in some way.
You've made me realise there that they skipped out on the potential interesting other implication of William Scully being integral to the conspiracy.
I guess that would have felt like even more of a reach that Bill Scully and Bill Mulder were both tied in different parts of this conspiracy.
Oh, absolutely, but it's not much worse than Scully's the friend of the family happens to have been on the Zeus Faber to retrieve the very thing that they're now investigating, by chance.
I do like their connection, though, and how she gets him to open up, because the first time she speaks to him, I don't know why Scully thinks this man presents himself barely remembering her, inferring that he's got dementia, and Scully reels off the license number of a plane and thinks he'll remember it, and I don't know why it comes to that. bizarrely, this man's lying to her, but I like the link just because it gives us a really good line in there as well of why he decides to help her. Because he does the conspiratorial thing of having her stopped at the gate and slipping into a car, which is always neat and intriguing. But the line is, "We bury our dead alive, don't we?" Which is a kind of neat idea, and it's something that the X-Files has touched on before, and I imagine it'll touch on again, is this idea of, the dead being able to talk to us. Not in the kind of X-Files sense that we have seen of the dead literally talking to us, but the kind of secrets that carry that kind of can still be uncovered after someone has passed away. It's a really neat concept, and it really is the focus of this episode, as well as, a lot of the information they need lie with the dead.
Yes. But I do take your point that some decent detective work would have made this all flow a lot better if Johansson hadn't turned out to be a childhood friend, because that's just really way of getting it to fit into the time frame, because he could have just been a retired naval person.
He could have still been a childhood friend, but they need a specific reason to know that that plane was connected to him in some way. And not Scully thinking, oh, hey, yeah, we've got a family friend who was vaguely connected to this time period and was evidently in the Air Force, so how will we know this?
Well, that's also where it gets a bit strange then, isn't it? Because she's going to talk to him about the F-51 Mustang, but he's a naval officer because he was on a submarine. So she could have found out that he was on the Zeus Faber, and that's your connection. Not, your son used to make model kits of this kind of plane, so I'm going to talk to you about it. What in the hell is going on? That's terrible writing.
Well, it's thinks of things you've made. I've got a Gundam I made upstairs. Therefore, if there was a giant mech attack, would you call me in? It's such a tangential thing.
Yeah, it's one of these things where you kind of have to let it off for TV limitations at the same time. You still could have written this better. This didn't have to be done like this.
No, I'm not leaving this up. I will buy that for the ease of the episode, Scully's family friend being involved in this and it happening to be Scully's family friend and not any other naval general. I don't buy the chain of logic that she came to this by. You need something else, just something that would specifically send you to him.
To compound on that, though, you've also got the element of luck of he's one of 7 soldiers who survived that encounter. So it's that, so you've got that odds, and he's a family friend, and he's still alive, and you're on good terms with his son, which is your whole entry point into this.
It's how this man's escaped as well, because with the conspirators in the series being as they are, you think they would have wiped out anyone who'd vaguely come in contact with this alien.
Yeah, and Apocrypha will really cloud this when we get into it.
But we've seen it in previous episodes as well, is anybody comes close to anything like this and they get erased.
Yeah, except for the times they don't. Like, it's remarkable that Max wasn't murdered in Falling Angel for it to pick a one at random.
But Max was discredited.
Yeah.
He was a kook and no one would believe this.
I suppose there's that. Which again makes that Senate hearing I brought up at the start really weird to experience in real life. Because we're used to the conspiratorial angle of no one must ever know, and if you come out and say this, you're going to be discredited almost immediately, because we cannot let this information out.
Makes you wonder.
It does. Anything else?
No, I will say for this one, and particularly for a conspiracy episode, it's a really well-paced episode, though. For the little plot holes, and some of these are actually resolved in Apocrypha.
This is true.
Making it quite a sound two-parter on the whole. But it's nicely paced, it's fast, it keeps your attention. The black oil's intriguing, especially with its transmission vector and bringing in this kind of body snatcher's fear of who do we know in the cast, is Skinner been possessed this whole time? When you've got a creature like that involved, you don't know if you can trust anyone, which brings to mind the trust no one of the X-Files.
Exactly. And again, I would be so much more invested in it if the damn thing had kept its cool and not killed the crew.
But we're now at a point in the series where we not only know that some kinds of aliens can shapeshift, but others can possess people.
Yeah.
We're literally into the realm of literally anyone can... Not only can you not trust anyone, but anyone can be compromised at any time in the Thing style. And would you know it?
You wouldn't. I mean, it's again, they just come back to that weird problem of the X-Files structure of having the conspiracy stuff and the Monster of the Week stuff. And how you could ever believe the Monster of the Week stuff is not aliens in disguise anymore, and then rather than genuinely, it's just conspiracy stuff.
I thought we were all in agreement that it's God.
Well, yeah, exactly that. Come on, Scully, say, well, I found this passage in the Bible which says,
"Thou shalt not drop B-51 bombers into the ocean." No, I think link with the Bible is tangential in this one.
well,
Though the next episode is called Apocrypha.
it is called Apocrypha. If we move along to Apocrypha, Apocrypha, for those who do not know, refers to the non-canonical books of the Bible. Canonical not being in the fandom sense, this is the original idea of canon of when they had the agreement of what went into the Bible, these are the bits that were included and the bits that aren't included. Which, to me, has always been a mind-blowing thing of, wait, you're telling me people actually sat down and decided which bits they wanted in?
You're thinking of things like the Dead Sea Scrolls as things that weren't counted. Yeah.
So, Apocrypha, directed by Kim Manners, written by Frank Spotnitz and Chris Carter. First broadcast on the 16th of February, 1996. Guest stars, we sadly omitted him last time, but we'll give him his due props now, because he gets 9 episodes. So, he's had a few, so that's not good for him. Is Brendan Brissia as Pendrell, who is the lab tech guy.
Lovable Pendrell.
With the crush on Scully. He's been in a few things, like Orphan Black and Dead Like Me.
Okay.
There's also Kevin McNulty, who guest stars as Agent Brian Fuller, who I could swear made Dead Like Me and Pushing Daisies and Hannibal.
Could be a reference.
Could be a reference. He, weirdly enough, you've previously seen him in Squeeze as the agent who didn't believe Mulder's lie detector test. As far as the credits are concerned, this is the same guy, who apparently is willing to work with Scully still. He's also in Soft Light as the villain guy. I can't remember his name. Christopher something or other, isn't it?
I want to say it was Christopher, yeah. He's the guy who locks Chester Banton in the thing towards the end.
Yeah. He was never in Story 3 with Jack Black, so everything just keeps coming back into the same few things.
That's neat.
He was on Snakes on a Plane. And he'll be in Millennium.
Ah, cool.
There's also Suleka Matthew, who plays Agent Linda Kaleka, who was previously in Roland. I did not notice, and I can't actually bring to mind who she is.
Okay. Oh, I was about to ask who did she play, but I can't think.
Lisa Cole. So, would you like to give us a synopsis for Apocrypha?
Okay. Our episode this time begins with a flashback to 1959 of one of the badly radiation-burned crewmen from the Zeus Faber recounting what happened to him after the door was slammed shut on them all, as we saw in Piper Maru. He's telling the story to 3 government agents who are standing around his hospital bed. We see again that the crew members in varying degrees of radiation sickness were locked in with their captain, the man who was infected by the black oil. They manage to eventually overpower and knock out the captain, though that doesn't help them being trapped in the infirmary. And the black oil exits his body and slithers away into a grate, presumably disappearing into the ocean. It's quickly revealed that 2 of the men that this guy is speaking to are Bill Mulder and the cigarette-smoking man. We return to the present day, where Mulder and Kryzik are now back in the USA. They hire a car but are run off the road by another vehicle. Their assailants attempt to kidnap Kryzik, but are severely injured when he suddenly disappears in this blinding flash of light. Luckily, Mulder is out of range, so does not contract the radiation burns. When the cigarette-smoking man sees their bodies, he immediately orders their destruction, even though they're not dead. Mulder was knocked unconscious in the crash, awakening only briefly to see the flash of light. He meets with Scully in hospital, where Scully tells him about Skinner's condition, and also says that they analysed saliva found on his body and identified the fact that his shooter was the same person who killed Melissa. Meanwhile in New York, the Syndicate meet to discuss the events surrounding the Piper Maru. They realise that someone must be leaking information. Meanwhile, Skinner tells Scully that he recognised the shooter as the man who was with Kryzik when the digital tape was stolen from him. Mulder analyses the oil that was found on the diving suit and comes to believe it's some kind of medium used by an alien life form to transfer body to body. He also comes to the conclusion that Kryzik is the current host for the creature. Mulder and the lone gunman manage to figure out where to use the key that Kryzik gave him at the previous episode to supposedly recover a tape from a locker at an ice rink. However, Mulder finds that the tape case is empty. Meanwhile, the black oil, still possessing Kryjik, returns the tape to the cigarette-smoking man. He exchanges it for the location of a recovered UFO. We presume that this is the one that was recovered in Nisai. As a photo fit of Louis Cardinal is released in newspapers, the Syndicate admonishes the cigarette-smoking man for moving the UFO to a new location. Mulder and the lone gunman further analyse the envelope that the tape was once kept in, and notice an engraving on it, which turns out when they rub a pencil over it to be a telephone number. When Mulder calls it, it connects him to the Syndicate's office and he speaks with the well-manicured man, who agrees to meet with him in Central Park. The well-manicured man tells Mulder that a UFO was sunk during World War II, and the whole cover story of the atom bomb was used to hide its attempted recovery. Mulder, on the other hand, reveals to the well-manicured man that Kryjik is still alive, something that the Syndicate were unaware of, as the cigarette-smoking man previously told him that he'd been assassinated. The well-manicured man reveals that literally anyone can be gotten to, causing Mulder to phone Scully and ask that she checks on Skinner. Scully does just this and discovers that Skinner's bodyguards have been dismissed, and that he has been currently moved to an ambulance to be transported to another hospital. She rushes after them and joins him in the ambulance, however is attacked when Cardinal attempts to break into the vehicle. Scully manages to get the upper hand and tracks him down and arrests him. Cardinal reveals to her that Kryjik is currently headed for an abandoned missile silo in Black Crow, North Dakota. Mulder and Scully both head over there to find many empty silos, which should have been cordoned off and sealed with concrete. As they delve deeper into the base beneath these silos, the agents are quickly captured by the cigarette-smoking man's men and escorted away. We, as the audience, see that they were only meters away from their goal behind a door labelled 1013. Behind this door, Kryjik is sitting atop the UFO, coughing out masses of black oil, which seep into the ship. A little while later, back at the FBI offices, we see that Skinner has returned to Earth and he brings some bad news for Scully to Mulder. Mulder meets with Scully at Melissa's grave and explains to her that Cardinal has been found dead in his cell. Meanwhile, we see back at the silo that Kryjik is now trapped inside the room with the UFO and is banging on the door in a panic, desperate to be let out.
Thank you. Gonna start in a weird place, this one. We observed at one point that the consortium have an air of the final solution discussions. When, everyone's talking in very ambiguous words, but everyone knows what they mean.
The Syndicate, yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying the most awful things, but you're couching it in terms. So, they always say our friends and things, don't they?
Mm.
And this one, first Elder just says UFO. Or actually, he says UFO, but still, he's just blurting out the thing. Because I think I said at one point, is the meetings of the Syndicate should be the most boring, incomprehensible thing ever, where they're just talking euphemisms the entire time. You're not meant to say UFO ever. It breaks the whole mind. It breaks the whole mood.
At the very least, you think they say vessel or something like that.
Yeah, or craft or something. There should be a coded word for it. And saying UFO, I realise again, this is possible. You've got to spell out to the audience what they've got, but it doesn't track with how they operate.
I suppose at the same time, they have no reason to be as secretive as they've been within their own sealed secret rooms.
Exactly, but then they never say aliens, do they? They always say our friends or something. So
sometimes it's been unclear as to whether or not they're referring to the aliens.
Oh, true. But I think we can take it as read that basically they are always talking euphemisms. It's presumably it's just the essential security of everyone knows what we're on about. We've got these couched terms. If anything, God forbid, someone got a bug into this place or something, or someone turned on us, what we said in it isn't going to mean anything.
All they get is a really good recipe for lobster bisque.
Exactly. So, well-manicured man saying UFO to Mulder, that's fine. It's just the Syndicate themselves shouldn't use the term. As your synopsis notes as well, we are led to assume this is the craft recovered in Nisai.
I assume it has to be.
It has to be from how they're phrasing everything. It has to be the same craft.
I think my big problem with that is it looks nothing like the craft they recovered in
and
Nisai.
It's a fraction of the size. Because the one he saw in Nisai was pretty big in a warehouse, whereas the one that Kryjik sat on, as you said, is a different shape and a lot smaller.
Big metal pizza slice.
And now we're going to get into the whole, hey, that what Piper Maru setup doesn't seem to work. Because, bear with me on this one. Okay, so at some point, the UFO was shot down. I thought it's very interesting that they say it was a Foo Fighter, which is a genuine term used back in around World War II for UFOs, and is where the name of the band, the Foo Fighters, comes from.
It was originally taken from a comic strip, I believe, about a fireman and his vehicle called the Foo-mobile or something, because it's where there's foo, there's fire, was the tagline for it.
And so I love that as a little detail, and the fact that we sunk this in World War II, that's kind of cool. We are forced by the episode, though, to conjecture this is a black oil craft, so that's fine. Gonna be a bit weirded out by where the P-51 Mustang enters into proceedings, because that has to have sunk. Was it what sunk it? But then it's the wrong time period, or is it? No, it's probably around the right time period, isn't it? Okay, so
you've got, if the thing was sunk by a World War II bomber, that kind of lines up with the time period that a few years down the line in the early 1950s, we've sent a submarine down to reclaim it.
Yeah.
So it fits together that way. I guess we've got to make the assumption that the bomber and the UFO managed to down each other.
Yeah, so I can go with that. But this is where I become unstuck. So the black oil, the black oil's entire motivation across 2 episodes, as far as we can tell, based on Apocrypha, is he wants to get back to that ship.
Mm.
The black oil was in the ship when it crashed, because it has to go into the submarine that way, and it got into the fighter plane to infect the guy and then got into Garcia. The Talipus retrieved the UFO a few months previous. Why did it come out the UFO?
That's a good point. Your only other assumption would be that there were 2 UFOs down there, and the Talipus dredged up the other one, which is getting to our increasingly unlikeliness of, in this vast ocean, that there are 2 different UFOs sunk at different times on top of each other.
Exactly. I mean, what it led to me to wonder, when we were going through the episodes the first time, I thought, and the way it made me try and conjecture the conspiracy at first, was they said this is the third atom bomb that never got dropped. And I immediately went to, this is a cover story, we've got the black oil, we've managed to contain it in something. Possibly it looks like a bomb casing. And either something went wrong or we deliberately scuttled it into that part of the ocean, basically, to abandon it.
Mm.
And then that doesn't quite match up properly. So I thought, again, it's a case of, okay, so the black oil infected this pilot of a P-51 Mustang and we shot him down over this patch of ocean, basically to contain it before it go and do something else, whatever it was doing. That would set up Piper Maru better than what the explanation we get is, because I don't understand what happened there with the black oil.
Mm.
And I don't know, personally, I like the whole idea of we've captured it, we cannot keep it contained as it is, it's breaking out, whatever we try, we're going to have to shove it where it basically is going to be unable to do anything, sink it to the bottom of the ocean. We can try and get it later. So, yeah. The other point, though, the thing that really made me laugh was young cancer man. Like, isn't he just adorable?
Well, they overdub him and not Bill Mulder.
I know, it's just hilarious. It's the moment of realization is great though, when he sort of says, "Oh, you will sort of do this for you, won't you, Mr. Mulder?" And you go, "Oh hell!" And it just, the camera swings across to the third person who lights up a cigarette, and that's all you needed. You didn't need to have William Davis's voice come out of his mouth. That's not your voice.
I think it's entertaining for goofs as well, the fact that Bill Mulder's actor is evidently Russian, because he does indeed still have the Russian accent too.
It's like, what's going on? I understand why they've done it again, because you have to get this across to someone. But it's the whole... How Johansson told it in Piper Maru was when they opened that door, everyone inside was dead.
Hmm.
And this is, we opened the door, took this one survivor out who's very badly burned, but still alive enough to give us a transcript.
But probably not going to last much longer.
Yeah, and then he died. But can you keep your story straight? Because you've got the cool thing of when you open the door, everyone inside was dead. That's a fantastic mystery setup. And I do realise that you're then stuck with the whole, where did the black oil go given it was contained in this room? Apparently it's run back out the submarine and into the ocean and then into a B-51 Mustang. Again, the black oil has no chill. If it was just a bit more subtle, a bit more contained, it would be fine. Which you can do with Krychek. Because it's fine with Krychek. I mean, it's only when he got threatened they actually did the whole radiation burn.
Well, it's fine with Gautier until that bit with his wife.
I know, and the fact, though, that he was doing the Terminator thing of not speaking to anyone during that bit. It's nice to see the Lone Gunman, though. They didn't have enough to do, but it's nice to see them.
Yeah. That little fun exchange they get when they're debating FBI technology, and then Mulder just takes a rubbing with a pencil is quite good.
Lovely little moments, and just Hickey being sort of like just kind of mystified by it for a second. Which actually is a very odd directorial choice, but anyway.
I even like using them to subtly retrieve the tape as well when you've got Langley stumbling around on the ice.
Yes, and we have that weird thing that Byers is an actual figure skater.
In his youth, he was trained as a figure skater, yeah.
Who knew? It's not going to come up much, but it's nice to see them. I think the nuisance of it, though, is the fact that it's very clear that Mulder can never be allowed to have the tape, even though I think we've forgotten it's in Navajo, because no one seems to bring up the whole, you can have the tape, you're going to have to go talk to Albert Holstein again, who allegedly translated the tape already and should be able to tell you the potted history of what's on the tape, but we can ignore that for now. But
I think you can assume as well that maybe Skinner was lying about that.
Oh, no, and not so much he said God also could dictate it. Scully says in Anasazi that Albert helped encode the files the first time.
He's got a vague idea what's on it. I got the impression that Skinner was calling Cancerman's bluff when he said 30 people have memorized this entire tape.
Absolutely. But it's if Albert was involved in coding the original files, like Scully says, in case of what on earth is going on, we can shortcut this. But we've got rid of the digital tape at last. It's actually kind of odd because it's an easily ongoing MacGuffin that we've just decided to destroy. And again, we see the black oil definitely has Krychek's memories, so because otherwise it could not possibly know how to get to Cancerman. And I love I have a reputation for not liking anything, but I love the scene though where it comes in, just drops the tape. And Lewis Cardinal points a gun and is like, put that down. He's not going to do anything. I know exactly what he's after. And I'll give it to him.
You really have to give it to him with how dangerous that thing is.
Oh, yeah. It's, again, an interesting thing we saw starting to build up in Anasazi, Blessing Way Paperclip, is Cancerman's deviance from the rest of the Syndicate. Because they are all... I mean, Well-Manicured Man is leaking stuff to Mulder all the time, but he's with them whatever they're doing, whereas Cancerman has his own agenda, it feels increasingly, and he's involved in this, but he's not going to tell them anything he doesn't have to.
I feel a bit that Cancerman is playing with fire, though, because we have in this episode Well-Manicured Man figuring out that he's lying to them.
Yes. Oh, yeah, presumably.
Just the little look, it's such a little glimpse where you as the audience know that Mulder has given the Well-Manicured Man something he doesn't know.
Yeah. I also like Well-Manicured Man's level of paranoia of give Mulder this address, disconnect the phone line.
I actually like the way that the Well-Manicured Man deals with Mulder a lot more than I like the way Cancerman does, because Cancerman just won't give him anything.
Yeah.
Well-Manicured Man's smarter. It's the truth sandwich where he'll feed Mulder bits that seem significant but really aren't, and like have the lie that's sandwiched between two truths that make it believable.
Yes. And I think in some cases, because I think this was the case in Paperclip, is he actually sometimes doesn't even tell him anything. He'll set something up and then Mulder completes the thought.
Yeah.
And he actually hasn't said anything, because it was the thing about the hybrids. He just says, look at the hybrid orchid, and Mulder conjectures off of that.
It's interesting, because we've had Well-Manicured dealing with Mulder a couple of times now, and also the First Elder speaking directly with Scully in 731. They're a lot smarter than the Cancerman is.
Well, I was just saying, it did come up in a synopsis, unfortunately, but Cancerman shows up at the end of the episode when they're trying to find Krychek. But there's that great moment when Mulder and Scully are hustled outside and saying, he's here, isn't he? And the Cancerman just says, you saw nothing! Nothing! Because does that work?
Cancerman has a lot of power, but you get the impression that he's not the smartest member of this group.
Yes, I think also he's got a lot of power, but he's also uncomfortably aware of how little control he actually has of it. As you said, it's playing with fire. He has enough things to control how things are working, but he's very aware of how carefully he has to do it. And if he slips up at all, it's going to go very badly wrong for him.
It's much like Well-Manicured Man tells Mulder, is the fact that they can get to anyone.
Yeah, but Well-Manicured Man, their relationship to the project is different, and what Cancerman has to do is so much more hands-on, so he's got to keep so many more plates spinning. Well-Manicured Man does not have that fidgety nature that Cancerman has.
I still get the impression that Cancerman is not part of the inner circle. Is you have these ones that sit in the boardroom and pull the strings, essentially, like the First Elder and the Well-Manicured Man. Whereas Cancerman's more of an enforcer of, he's got a lot of power, but he's not quite in this Eclean.
Yes, well, I think that's made me think of how Darth Vader was originally in Star Wars, is he is the Nazi enforcer, like the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's basically the guy you send in to do stuff.
You've got this idea of the fact that he has a lot of control and he commands a lot of fear, but he's not one of the ones that kind of control the puppets.
Yeah, but he does know exactly what's going on.
Mm.
He's just not in a position to take control of it.
Mm.
Despite being there at the start, weirdly, because again, it's the fact he's there in Apocrypha, one of 3 people talking to this sailor. But
again, he's there in the field, he's not sat in an office.
That's true. I suppose the other interesting thing about Apocrypha is that aspect of them not understanding what they shot down, which I suppose, presumably it was shot down because they thought it was an enemy craft back in World War II. They had no idea what exactly they shot down. And sometimes later someone said, none of these reports make any sense. Should we go and look at what that was?
Imagine it's much like we've seen already. It's Fallen Angel, we have military shooting down an unidentified craft. This is the World War II equivalent of this.
Yeah. Talking of goofs, though, there's the hilarious one about Lewis Cardinal, where the waitress gives him the blood type.
That bothers me so much.
I just saw it on the Goose when I was reading up on the episode. He goes, we already got the blood type from the waitress. You what?
It doesn't word it that way. It's somebody reels off the information that they have about Lewis Cardinal, which includes blood type, and Scully says something like, we got all this information for the waitress. How?
No, Scully. I mean, this might speak to Cancerman's actual not being a great operative, the fact he's using the same killer to take out the guy who's looking too much into his other previous killing.
Well, he's lost Krychek. He's only got 1 now. Red-headed man's gone as well.
I don't think that was actually his, but he had the 2 who ran Krychek off the road and that were killed.
Whoever it was in Red Museum, he's lost too.
Oh, Crooked Man.
Yeah, Crooked Man. We're losing assassins now. All he's got is Lewis Cardinal.
I also like the implication, though, that how much advanced one did Cancerman have that Krychek was coming to his apartment? Was Lewis just sort of crouched in the corner all night? Is this what he does?
I like most of them, we've had Lewis Cardinal named on screen now as well.
Yeah.
Because essentially they've got to dispose of him by this point. He's too visible.
Yeah, but I did feel it's the weak ending of just coming up and saying, oh yeah, he's found dead in his cell. Okay, so surely you could have given us something more on that.
Or have him dying in an improbable way in his cell.
Yeah, we want something like, indeed...
The one in the list who chokes on his sheet.
The walk.
Yeah.
Yes. Something like that. An improbable thing where people say, oh, it's suicide, but it's because of, how?
It could only possibly be suicide, one of those.
I think this episode also has the very first and very tenuous nod to Area 51. Though they just say Nevada.
They mention that the other ships are in Nevada.
Yeah. So I think that's the first time we've ever had it, and actually interesting that Cigarette Smoker Man is too visible these days because everyone knows where it is. Not what goes on there, but everyone knows where Groom Lake is.
It feels like the obvious place that we're going to hide UFOs is going to be Area 51, because you wouldn't expect it. You'd think, no way in hell would they actually be there.
It's an elaborate double bluff. Jump to a different subject entirely again. We have to have words with what Mulder is doing with his spare time. Because Scully comes into the office. Mulder has been to Hong Kong. Mulder's been to hospital. Mulder's recovered. Scully comes into the office. There is a diving suit completely set up on its harness in the middle of the floor.
In their usually very cramped office as well, and they fit this enormous bit of equipment in there.
This office, there was once where the photocopier lived. I don't know what the FBI is playing at with that one, but anyway. I mean, maybe there were a lot of photocopiers in there. Anyway. But he's got the diving suit, and this is probably the worst case of Mulder's been reading the script that we've ever seen, but it's Mulder's read last week's script. Because he conjectures exactly what happened in Piper Maru based on the flimsiest reason I think I've ever seen. And it's like the diesel oil thing in every case. Oh, it's just diesel oil. It's been changed by radiation. Do we want to get into this a bit more?
I cited it for the last episode too, but in a world where soft light is possible, sure.
Yeah, I suppose so. I would think that you'd sort of be a bit more concerned in this case of Mulder, should we look into the oil companies? If you're saying this stuff is a vector for alien transmission, should we not be looking at the oil companies? Are they on the conspiracy?
Yeah, I like your scale. Literally any car could be filled with aliens.
Yep. It's just the grim future of the X-Files is that all the cars... Oh my god, it's going to turn into Transformers crossover. So they all start transforming into giant robots and take over the world.
Epic. As we just said though, you can't trust anybody, anyone can be compromised at any time, and now your car can be too.
Yeah, also those oil rigs. So you get great big huge
It
things.
doesn't have to be Transformers, we could be Christining ourselves off cliffs and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Cars that ate Paris without the drivers. It's always disappointing to know that's Paris, Australia rather than Paris, France.
Yeah.
I know. I watched it and was really disappointed because this is not what I signed up for. I do like having been to probably not the exact location, but into the vicinity. That is the least Central Park looking Central Park set I've ever seen.
It's got a lamp and a tree.
And that's enough, apparently.
Central Park, Vancouver.
Yeah, which bit of scenery we could make out is actually New York City. Yeah, it's not too bad from this angle, boss.
They did say it was near the reservoir.
They did say we didn't. Admittedly, we didn't make it up that far, so maybe there is that exact filming location. But given I don't think they filmed anything in New York for this one, I'm going to go with no. It's one of the weird things though when they say, meet me in 3 hours in New York. Is from my perspective, certainly, unless not living in the area, you forget that Washington and New York actually are that close to each other. That is a plausible, very quick dash.
I think when we visited New York, I even looked at it. You can do day trips from one to the other, so it can't take you long to get there.
Oh no, but you're used to US cities, like the capitals, being so far flung from each other. Because of another place, like Die Hard with a Vengeance has a comment of how quickly they can get people to New York from Washington for the FBI, and it's only a handful of hours, and it just always feels weird to me though.
I guess it seems weird. In the UK, we don't fly to other regions of the UK, so you even think of, getting between London and Edinburgh, that's going to take me absolutely hours, because you're thinking of the trains.
Yeah. But again, Mulder meeting Well-Manicured Man feels like, once again, like we're just splitting Mulder and Scully up so we can do different things with them and make sure they can't interfere with each other. Because Scully gets to defend Skinner in a sequence of events that just doesn't feel right. Because it's the whole, okay, so we sent the guards home and Skinner's being transferred to another hospital. No point do we stop and say, why is he transferred to another hospital? Because surely he's recovering just fine? Did he ask for it?
I also want to question if the paramedic driving that ambulance is in on this, because if you're travelling someone who's high risk, and indeed Skinner's got an IV stand and everything, there should be someone in the back of that ambulance anyway. So surely if he's not in on it, wouldn't the driver think this was a bit sus that they loaded up this guy and then scarpered and left no one else in the back?
Absolutely. And again, I know we could say this is a hallmark of Cigarette Smoking Man's basically uselessness for his actual role, in that he couldn't come up with another assassin again, so Lewis Connolly's already failed to kill Skinner once, and he's going to try again. And not something subtle like you could put some drugs into his IV stand and no.
Even he takes a mysterious trip out of a 6th floor window in the hospital.
Exactly. But no.
He's badly injured. I'm sure you could punt him out of a window fairly easily.
Yep, but no, we're going to drive him through traffic and Lewis Connolly is going to burst into the back of the ambulance partway through and shoot him.
It's not even that you're taking him to another location where he'll never be seen again.
Yeah. It's a great action sequence, and I love Scully looking torn when she's got him at gunpoint of, pulling the trigger and doing what she's meant to.
But it's also, again, showing Scully's support over Mulder more so, is that Cardinal has information about the conspiracy. He's willing to give it to them so she doesn't shoot him.
Yes.
Mulder would have gunned that man down if it was the other way around.
I'd say well, that's more debatable. What I'd have said what Mulder would have done, though, is he would have gotten away from the authorities. He wouldn't let him be arrested.
No, put them in the other shoes of, this man has information Scully wants, but Mulder discovered he killed Samantha. Mulder would have gunned that man down.
True. I mean, that is an interesting point, sorry, that we didn't bring up in Piper Maru, is that Krychek insists he didn't kill Mr. Mulder. I think the question is then, who in the hell did? Because we saw him in that bathroom.
It was that other man hiding in that shower.
It was Lewis Cardinal all over again. He killed a lot of people in not a lot of time.
It should also be noticed that Krychek's first language is lies.
Well, I know. So it's just a very odd thing to deny to Mulder at this late stage. Like, what are you going to do, Krychek? Is that going to help you?
It's presumably stopping Mulder from killing him on the spot.
Yeah, but he won't tell him where the key goes to. And that feels like a missed scene of them figuring out where this key actually relates to, because we just cut to an ice rink, and until we see the lone gunman going, what in the hell is going on now?
I'm not sure how they located that ice rink either.
Yeah.
It's a pretty nondescript key, I think, that just says C1 on it, or CI, or something like that.
And we also have to conjecture that there are two, because Cratchit got to the tape first. Or the black oil Cratchit got to the tape first.
Or it was never in there. I'm still not sure why you'd seal up an empty case inside there other than to just be a dick. Anyway.
I imagine that, yeah, as much as the black oil's in control, it's also Cratchit's on the back of its head going, no, be a jerk. Go on, seal it back. Go on, put it back.
It'd be really funny when Mulder opens this and there's nothing in it.
Yes! Is this Cratchit out, though? Because he's survived this encounter, but he's locked in a silo in a disused place that no one is going to go near.
It's a hideous end as well. Even for somebody as detestable as Kryjik, this is really mean. Just leaving him to starve to death in a silo.
Well, and Syndicate just just smiles and walks away. It's a and again, the ultimate problem with the episode is the black oil is a fantastic idea. I just don't think it's been they haven't thought through some of the consequences of what they're setting up properly. But it's things like him coughing up the black oil onto the spaceship and it just being absorbed into it. That's all great and cool and alien.
It's fantastic. That's all done through prosthesis as well. It took about an hour to apply that prosthesis to Nicholas Lee, because it's numerous tubes that are running along his hairline and neck, just to give that idea of him just vomiting vast amount of oil. But there was the story on set for that one in the fact that it left him basically blind and having to breathe through a straw, and they spent an hour applying this prosthesis to him, then everyone went off to lunch, leaving him just sat there utterly pissed off, waiting for them to return to film his scene.
That's not good, guys. I love the creepiness of it, though, and just him left alone with the ship. But then we're getting into the awkward things of, okay, so the black oil didn't take off from its ship because it's like under 7,000 feet of water. Okay, that's fine. It feels odd for it not to take off at the end of the episode, because it's
kind of trapped 8 stories beneath the ground, though, now as well. It's fair enough it wants to get to its ship, but what's it going to do with it?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not going to be ignorant of that walking into that place, because it'll have seen exactly what the situation is before Cratchit vomited it up.
You think part of your deal would be, can you at least wheel it up the stairs for me?
Or open the silo up so I can VTOL out of there. And usually at this point you'd be giving me the cockroach speech, but a case of this is really baffling behaviour. Because as far as we can tell, it's still in there.
This thing has lasted for hundreds of years, though unchanged. It's very patient.
Are you telling me it's just going to wait for the concrete to weather away?
Or wait for the ideal opportunity when it can escape easily.
I suppose so.
It's evident that the Syndicate don't know what the hell to do with the spaceship because they haven't reverse engineered it or anything like that.
No, well,
unlike the Deep Throat ones where they've kind of integrated them into US technology.
Is this the one they couldn't do, though, because you can't figure out piloting from basically there's just a tank inside there where the black oil sits.
There's not much to the ship when you see it from the side, though. It's quite small and narrow. As I called it, the pizza slice before, it doesn't look like somebody could fit inside it.
Yeah, and again, the scale of thing we saw in Nisai versus this one is so off from each other.
We've never seen another ship that quite looks like this one. We've seen some that are a bit similar from underneath, but nothing as small.
Yeah, and it's
so I'm going to posit this is a new sort of craft as well.
Which would make sense for a new type of alien. Because we've definitely never seen that kind before.
I love the hatch with the kind of...
the spiral.
Yeah, the Uzumaki spiral in the middle of it.
Well, again, it feels like this is a glimpse that we haven't had with any other type of alien into an aspect of their world that we just wouldn't know otherwise, that spirals are inherent to some part of their life or their society or whatever.
The oil physics as well is they get that effect of it draining away by having the set rigged so it could tilt, just so they could manipulate it to move as they want to. Because the first experiment apparently was making the black oil a magnetic liquid that they could control with magnets underneath, but they thought that the finished result was too comical. So having it actually moving like a fluid was the more effective way of doing it.
Which works. I mean, it does look very good. I mean, the black oil effects in general are all very good. It's a nice creepy motif just to see someone blink and their eyes sort of fill up with the black oil.
It's surprisingly convincing as well. It doesn't look cheap or fake.
No, I mean, it is done incredibly effectively. Yeah, I mean, I would be very happy for more black oil storylines. Depending. We don't know, this is not a single entity, though.
No.
We have the implication, like with the shapeshifters, that, anyone could now be possessed, anyone could be a shapeshifter. Again, Mulder, do you not want to just be paranoid about everyone you've come across?
I think you would be at this point. It's like, well, it could be a shapeshifter, they could be possessed by a parasite like ice, it could have the black oil now.
No, it's fine. We'll just go back to work as normal.
It could be reincarnated ghost. Literally, we cannot trust anyone.
And I wouldn't want the X-Files to change it ever, to be honest, because I do like, at this stage at least, I like the flip between the two of them. But it's hard not to sort of get to the point where you say the X-Files structure is wonky, that you are treating the conspiracies as running plot and Monster of the Week as completely divorced from it, that has no bearing on anything. Because again, those events should be affecting how they view everything else. Everything could be aliens. Who's to say shapeshifters can't shapeshift into werewolves or something?
Mm.
We don't know that Shapes wasn't a alien.
So it's heavily implied that it is an alien in shapes, to be honest.
Did they?
The Manitou, the creature in the woods.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this ends up making Revelation and Milk Man to a lesser degree the weirder ones. And probably Shadows as well. Though actually, no, we've had Space Ghosts, so we can explain ghosts.
Yep, you've got Space Ghosts. You have things like Ice, where it's implied that creature is alien, that it came on a meteor.
That's true. Okay, so it's the psychic children, the reincarnations, and the genetic monsters are less connectable.
Mm.
Although the Extraterrestrials Guide to the X-Files posits that the aliens did make them all. Just to screw with Mulder.
Feels legit. I keep harping on about how Mulder and Scully are the worst co-workers in the world ever.
And the worst couple?
Yeah. Scully times Skinner, away all the time. But we see it again at the end of this episode, is when Scully has Cardinal in her hands, the man that killed her sister, the man who can explain why he killed her sister, and Mulder drags her to North Dakota looking for UFOs.
Yep. I was going to say as well, just not to puncture your Skinner-Scully relationship a bit, but Skinner shouldn't have talked to Mulder about that stuff, like, at all.
No, I feel it's confidential.
Yeah, that scene should have been between Scully and Scully no matter what situation is. I can only think it's been done like that because it's the X-Files.
I appreciate Scully's composure of not punching him in the face and saying, "You asshole, we could have interrogated him and I went to North Dakota to not see a UFO."
Yeah, instead of I had Cancerman shouting at me again. Do you know how often this happens to me?
I feel again, though, that it's a problem with the series, and it's the problem with focusing on Mulder's search for the truth, is that Scully's plotlines just get shunted.
Yeah, I mean, you could easily actually say Melissa's case being deemed inactive is the writer's desperately saying, we need to get rid of this thread, it's not doing us any favours, we need to dispense with it.
But we don't do this with Samantha. Samantha's our ongoing plot, and I think it's kind of mean.
Yeah, I mean, as much as Scully gets all the Scully moments are built out of her sorrow of this mystery about her sister. Yeah, it's not being fair to her. Mulder's quest for the truth and the always possibility of finding out the truth is fine. Scully's is being just shut down and then concrete being poured on top of it.
Well, in 3 seasons, we've killed our way through 40% of Scully's family.
Yeah, and only, third of Mulder's?
Yep. Scully's got more brothers to pad it out, I guess, but...
So she does. But yeah...
It just feels a bit like we have these moments that feel like they could be better utilised. I don't want to slam on this too much because this has probably been my favourite 2-parter so far, and I think Apocrypha kind of fills in a lot of the holes in Piper Maru and makes quite a sound story on its own.
Yeah.
But I just wish that we spent more time focusing on Scully and more time letting Scully develop and not kind of having these bits where Scully has a moment and Scully has a chance for developments and then we snap back to Mulder's quest.
Yes, and if you really aren't going to give Scully this courtesy, don't separate them out like this so that they do get the two different plot lines. Just have them working as a unit.
I feel you need to separate them out because otherwise she'll just always be the sidekick.
Indeed. But when you're sort of just chopping and changing her plot lines like this, there's no point in actually letting her have these moments, is there?
But separating out is the only thing that gives Scully time to shine and not be Dr. Watson to the brilliant Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I'm going to call foul on the brilliance part. But you did touch on a good point of this is definitely the strongest multi-part episode we've ever had.
I think it's excellent. I had a lot of problems. There are still little problems like that flipping pilot in the down ship, but a lot of the issues we picked up watching Piper Maru are then resolved in Apocrypha, making it kind of very sound on the whole so long as you watch the 2 episodes back to back.
Yeah, it gets a little shaky on why we're doing some of these things, because it's awfully convenient what's happening, but yeah, there's not the kind of plot hitches we got between like Anasazi and Paperclip.
I think it's the pacing is better as well, in part with it being a 2-parter, as the Anasazi Blessing Way Paperclip was just too long. Having the 2 45-minute episodes is a perfect length for this little capsule story.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how much is just coming down to... It feels oddly like a Nexus, and it's actually kind of odd it's not the end of the season, doesn't it? That you actually have... The only thing you haven't brought into this one is the shapeshifters, who are outside the orbit of whatever's going on, given everything else has been linked back through Anasazi.
Yeah, that's true. That's the only thing we haven't really seen this season much of.
Have they shown up at all this season?
No, I don't believe they have. We haven't had them since Endgame.
Very odd. What are they up to?
I'm sure they'll be back.
Do you have anything else for this pizza-shaped sliced episode?
No, I think we've probably covered about everything in this.
But since we're dealing with digital tapes and aliens and a consortium, I'm afraid it's time for you to do your sum up. So we go again to Kim's Conspiracy Corner.
Okay, we've hit another weird twist in the conspiracy angle. We have had a few returning features in this one, which unfortunately have been a bit dead-ended. So we've found out about the vessel that the Talpus previously dredged up in Nisai. That is now in a silo deep beneath North Dakota, but seems to have dead-ended there, at least for the time being, as it's locked away. We also found out what happened to the tape, but unfortunately that's now back in Cigarette Smoking Man's hands. So, again, we're none the wiser as to what was contained on this device, and have a horrible feeling that this might have just been a MacGuffin for this stage of the series. What we do have is a new alien species, or entity of some kind, which we have been referring to as the Black Oil. Though its true nature is not entirely known, as Mulder hypothesizes that the oil itself is some kind of irradiated diesel oil that is just a transmission vector, so it might not actually be the true form of this creature. What we do know is this creature can last a long period of time in hostile environments, including the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. It's capable of possessing people by seeping into their body in some way. We don't actually see how, we only see it exiting the body through the holes of the face. And it does seem to have access to people's memories, at least to some degree while it's in there, at least enough to pass off as a person. It also, interestingly, possesses the same ability as the alien we saw in Fallen Angel, although it seems to be a different type, as both had the ability to produce a blinding flash of light which causes severe radiation burns on anyone, admittedly in a very close vicinity, as Mulder is quite nearby when we see Krycek doing this and seems unharmed and completely not irradiated. What we don't know is if this is going to be a reoccurring feature at this point. The Black Oil has raised some interesting possibilities because we don't know if this creature has been with us from the start, we don't know who's possessed, and we don't know kind of how prevalent this creature is, if this is a one-off creature or a race that could be quite threatening if it is going to set foot on Earth, as in the True the Thing style, not knowing who's infected and who's controlled by an alien creature is quite scary.
Thank you. Next week, then, we have Pusher and Tessos Despichos, or however the hell you pronounce that word.
I will look it up for next week for you.
I was called it Tessos Despichos.
the episode that's notoriously called Tessos Des Bitches by Kim Manners. So you have what is widely considered by fans as one of the very best episodes, paired with one that's universally reviled as being the very worst.
Yeah, and this one's going to be an interesting one, given we've not, like, there's been a few episodes where we've really sort of gone, oh my god, what is happening? But this is the one, isn't it? Actually, it's this, and one later one is the notorious bad ones.
True.
There is a later episode which is just leagues apart from everything else bad.
Do you say that Tessos Des Bitches is the second one next week?
Yeah.
Oh, so I get to summarise it.
You get to try and summarize us. And
Brill. Bring it on.
You're not allowed to every line say, unlike in The Relic, where...
Oh, I like The Relic.
We will talk about The Relic next week, because we won't be unable to avoid talking about The Relic, given it's very pertinent.
I will talk about The Relic next week because I like it a lot more, so there you are. Homework for everyone. Go watch The Relic. It's a great film.
Or read the book, maybe. Not sure how close that is.
Yeah. Swings and roundabouts. I like the film.
If you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsaregettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42@universedon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsaregettingstrange, where our Let's Play of the X-Files game is currently being uploaded. Episode 2 should be done shortly. I know I said that last week. It takes a while to work through the audio files in these ones. But that should be up there soon.
It should be noted as well that there are 3 tiers on our Patreon. If you fund us at any level, you do get access to the Let's Play. I also intend to go through some of the X-Files adult novels as opposed to the young adult ones I keep referencing. So that's the like of Whirlwind and Ruins.
But first it's Goblins. We've got to start with Goblins.
Yeah, okay. I keep skipping over the one I don't like. Goblins first, and then the books I actually like. And also, at some point, I'd like to talk about some of the comics as well, particularly the season 10 and 11 comic books, which came out before there was a season 10 and 11 of the series, so it makes them quite interesting.
Look forward to that. Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next week, remember...
We bury our dead alive.